Hey everyone, welcome to this explainer. Imagine for just a second a modern, massive corporation, like think of a massive tech or retail giant today, suddenly being granted the legal, sovereign right to collect taxes and run the courts for an entire nation. Sounds literally like the plot of a dystopian sci-fi movie, right? Well, this isn't fiction. This is exactly what happened back in 1764 with a joint stock trading enterprise that you know as the British East India Company.
It really begs the question, right? How on earth does a business entity completely focused on buying and selling goods pivot to taking over a massive, incredibly wealthy subcontinent? Like, how does a ledger-keeping trading company actually become an unstoppable military and political empire?
Okay, let's dive right into this. Our agenda for today is straightforward. 1. Prelude to Buxar. 2. The Nawab strikes back. 3. The ultimate showdown. 4. The Treaty of Allahabad. And finally, 5. Birth of an empire.
Let's kick things off with Section 1, Prelude to Buxar. Let's set the historical stage and look at the totally chaotic aftermath of 1757.
This brilliantly illustrates the massive contrast that defined the era. You see, the British originally got their foot in the door of Bengal through the Battle of Plassey in 1757. But Plassey? It wasn't really a military triumph. It was won through deceit, bribery, and political conspiracy. Buxar, on the other hand, was a whole different beast. This wasn't some backroom deal. Buxar was going to be a pure display of sheer, unadulterated military dominance.
So after Plassey, the British East India Company effectively became kingmakers, and Bengal's throne turned into this darkly humorous game of musical chairs. First, in 1757, they deposed the ruler, Siraj-ud-Dowlah, and installed his commander, Mir Jafar, as a puppet. But Mir Jafar just couldn't keep up with the company's endless financial demands. He even tried to revolt with the help of the Dutch, which led the British to force him out in 1760 with a meager 15,000 rupee pension. In his place, they installed his son-in-law, Mir Qasim. And when Qasim became a problem, well, they literally just brought Mir Jafar right back in 1763.
All right, moving on to Section 2, the Nawab strikes back. Specifically, we're looking at Mir Qasim's defiance, because he had absolutely no intention of being a corporate puppet.
As soon as he took power, Mir Qasim actively began building an independent administration. In 1762, he strategically moved his capital to Mughal, just getting away from the watchful eyes of the British in Calcutta. He declared his political autonomy, making it crystal clear he was a sovereign ruler, not just a middleman. And crucially, he started hiring foreign professionals to train and modernize his army. He knew a storm was coming, and he was absolutely preparing to meet it head-on.
Now, what's really interesting here is the core economic issue at play. The British were openly abusing an old decree called the Farman of 1717. They used these passes called dostocks to evade local taxes entirely, even for their own personal private trade, and this completely devastated the Bengal treasury. Indian merchants, meanwhile, were stuck paying heavy duties. So to level the playing field, Mir Qasim did something incredibly bold. He eliminated all internal trade duties entirely. He essentially gave local merchants the exact same tax-free status the British were exploiting. Predictably, the company was furious. They wanted preferential treatment for sure, not equality.
And that brings us right into Section 3, the ultimate showdown. Because by 1763, these boardroom arguments had escalated into outright war.
The British forces, led by a highly competent major named Hector Munro, struck fast. They defeated Mir Qasim in a rapid series of battles, forcing him to flee to Awadh. But he didn't give up. Instead, he formed an incredibly formidable triple alliance. He joined forces with Shuja-ud-Dowlah, the powerful Nawab of Awadh, and Shah Alam II, the Mughal Emperor himself. Together, they amassed a massive joint army with one unified goal: expel the British East India Company from Bengal once and for all.
The absolute climax came on October 22, 1764, at a small town on the banks of the Ganga River called Buxar. Now, this wasn't a swift ambush. It was a grueling, neck-and-neck military contest. But despite the overwhelming numbers of the native coalition, the fundamental frailties of the combined Indian troops were totally exposed. Major Hector Munro's highly disciplined English forces shattered the alliance. Mir Qasim abandoned his troops and fled into exile, eventually dying in obscurity. And the mighty Nawabs and the Mughal Emperor, they were completely routed.
Moving right along to Section 4, the Treaty of Allahabad. The battle was over, but the paperwork that followed would end up entirely rewriting destiny for the Indian subcontinent.
So the absolutely crucial point here revolves around this specific legal term, Diwani rights.
The British forced the Mughal Emperor to grant the East India Company the Diwani rights for Bengal, Bihar, and Orissa. I mean, let that sink in. Just to understand the magnitude of this, a company, with shareholders and a board of directors sitting all the way back in London, was now legally authorized to collect the land revenue and administer civil justice for millions of people. It was an unprecedented transfer of sovereign wealth directly into corporate ledgers.
Robert Clive's Treaty of Allahabad was just ruthless and incredibly calculating. Step 1. Shuja-ud-Dawla of Awadh was forced to pay a massive 50 lakh rupee war indemnity. But the British intentionally didn't annex Awadh. They cleverly left it intact to serve as a buffer state, to protect their new territories from Maratha and Afghan invasions. Step 2. The mighty Mughal Emperor Shah Alam II was placed under company protection, essentially reduced to little more than a rubber stamp, receiving a 53 lakh rupee corporate pension. And finally, Step 3. With the Diwani rights officially secured, the company took firm, legal control of the region's immense wealth.
Which brings us to our final part, Section 5, Birth of an Empire. This is the precise moment they transformed from mere merchants to undisputed masters.
You see, Buxar wasn't just another battle. It firmly established the British East India Company as the dominant, uncontested territorial power in northern India. The illusion of Mughal supremacy was completely shattered once and for all. The company now had the massive economic engine of Bengal's tax revenues to actually fund their armies and drive their expansion even further. They had officially transformed into a colonial authority that would grip India for the next 200 years.
So, it leaves us to reflect on a rather chilling reality of history. The Battle of Buxar wasn't just a clash of armies. It was the exact moment the line between commerce and conquest was erased. When a corporate entity secures the sovereign right to tax an entire nation and enforce its will with sheer military might, at what point does it cease to be a business and simply become an empire? Thanks for exploring this remarkable piece of history with me today.